Please help support the channel by visiting our Amazon store for such products like the Blue Yeti microphone, affiliate link below. Hey, what's going on everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo, this is the Mundane Matt channel, and this, I should say these, because there's been many, kind of stories are fun to talk about because even though it's been 3+ years of Gamergate, I do take a little bit of joy in watching the anti-Gamergaters fall. And many of them have, and many more probably will. And the reason why it's funny, it's not that I'm taking glee in this man's misfortune. Okay, I am a little, I'll be honest. But I'm doing so because these are the kind of people that spend years defaming us, attacking us, slandering us, libeling us. And we're not the bad guys. They are. And it's fun that they get caught. Anyway, Anti-GamerGate journalist Juan Thompson sentenced to 5 years in prison for bomb threats. Yeah, 5 years. Look at this guy. Yeah. Anyway, Chicago Sun-Times reported on December 20th, 2017 that former Intercept journalist and former intern at WBEZ-FM and DNA Info Chicago, Juan Thompson, has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for bomb threats he made against Jewish institutions, which the judge labeled as domestic terrorism. Again, I'd just like to point out that a group of individuals online arguing for ethics in video game journalism were labeled worse than Hitler, were labeled domestic terrorists, and so on and so forth. But here's a guy who is literally a critic in Anti-GamerGate, convicted of domestic terrorism. This follows on the charges that were levied against Thompson back in March of 2017 for the 8 bomb threats he issued prior to being arrested. Thompson admitted to threats along with admitting to cyberstalking and harassing his ex-girlfriend. He pled guilty to the charges. It says here that calling Thompson's crimes domestic terrorism, Judge P. Kevin Castell sentenced the St. Louis man to a year longer than federal sentencing guidelines recommended. He cited the eloquence of a victim statement delivered by Thompson's ex-girlfriend, Francesca Rossi. Now, Rossi said Thompson began abusing her during their relationship and intensified the terror delivered largely through social media and electronic communication after they broke up. Now, that's interesting to me in kind of a ironic, funny sort of way, because this is oftentimes how Gamergaters are labeled as such. They're using Twitter to express their discontent at the unethical practices of video game journalists. Terrorism! However, here's a guy who's literally been convicted of it. So it says here that he was arrested back in March by the FBI. He had been fired from the Intercept and other duties for fabricating stories and pushing an agenda. One of his agendas was the blame #Gamergate for being a campaign of misogyny, as he wrote in his piece for the outlet back in May 2015. So this is a guy who was convicted of domestic terrorism, in part because his misogynistic actions towards his ex-girlfriend. But we're the bad guys here. But this is what he wrote. He says, online racism directed towards Butler and other black writers is similar in its scope and severity to the online misogyny exposed by the Gamergate controversy last year. Many people were shocked to read about the torrent of misogynistic hate directed at video game developer Zoe Quinn after a jilted ex-boyfriend falsely accused her in a blog post of having used sex to advance in the gaming community. The threats got so bad that Quinn eventually fled her home out of fear for her safety. Yeah, we've all kind of proven that's a load of crap. Right? Like, if you go and you look at it, Quinn was in the process of moving to the south of France with Alex Lifshitz for a job in video games, even though they already started dating only a month earlier. So I almost feel like that was a kind of a quick escape plan, you know. But at the same time, Aaron Joni never said that in the blog post. It never happened. We know it never happened. But again, that's been kind of the narrative they run with. So it goes on to say here that Thompson is one of many anti-Gamergate journalists who have been outed for either sexual harassment, sexual abuse, or rape. And Thompson, however, is the first journalist who has been arrested, charged, and convicted for domestic terrorism. Now, again, just looking at that particular statement, those two sentences, what do we glean? We're not the bad guys. And I can shout this from the rooftops until the end of time, time and time again. I think 16 or 17 times now, according to a Mombot thread, we have been vindicated by our critics. We have been vindicated by them blaming us that we are harassers, that we are these evil, terrible, misogynistic people. We've been called the reason why Donald Trump has been elected. Actually, in Zoe Quinn's book, she alludes that Gamergate was the reason that Donald Trump was elected, and that Gamergate effectively started with my video on her. So in her own words, or in summation, she believes that I am the person who got Donald Trump elected, which is clearly not the case. I didn't vote for him. But I'm just saying, it's kind of like that is the mindset these people run on. That is how crazy they take things. That's how wild it gets. But of course, we are still the bad guys because we want ethics and proper disclosure and not to, hide things from your audience about people who you bumpin' uglies with. Now, one of the members of Game Journal Pros, Devin Connors, had once mentioned Gamergate wouldn't end until someone goes to prison back on September 6, 2014. And of course, this is coming from the Game Journal Pros list, which is, oh, that was a good one. That was a fun one. I liked the Game Journal Pros list because that was a leak of all of these, different writers from different outlets who were colluding together, even going as far in the leaked emails to come together to put together like a fund to buy Zoe Quinn something nice. Different writers for different outlets who are technically in competition with one another, colluding behind the scenes to get Zoe Quinn something nice. That, again, that's one of those things that shows you how far down the rabbit hole this kind of collusion went, which is why Gamergate is important. It's not was important. It still is very much important to a certain extent, but this is what we get to see. Now, because he says here it's not over till someone goes to prison. At this juncture, it appears that even after Anti-GamerGate journalist was convicted of domestic terrorism and is going to prison, the brakes on the Gamergate train won't be put to use anytime soon. That's true. Sadly, it's not an Amtrak in Washington. No, anyway, that was a bad joke. But the point is, looking at this guy here, looking at Juan Thompson, the things that he said, the fact that he was anti-Semitic, the fact that he called in these threats, he fabricated stories, he pushed an agenda, is not an uncommon occurrence for people in this particular line of work, the anti-SJW, so to speak. It's not in their wheelhouse to not be like this. And we are the ones who are blamed oftentimes for their misdeeds. It's unfortunate, but it is where we are. And well, with that, I'm curious to know your thoughts about this. Are you kind of like me and giggling a little bit at this man's misfortune? I understand today is December 23rd. Christmas season's in full bloom. I should be wanting, goodwill towards men. But when I see someone who's as much of a scumfuck as this guy just get railed by the legal system because of the things he did, not his opinion, not his comments on something, not how he thinks about something, not who he voted for, but literally what he did. Calling in threats. I mean, bomb threats are no joke. They've never been a joke, but this guy is very much using that as a way of, kind of night crawlering the news, that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, essentially. And it really does make you think, if he can do this, and people like Matt Hickey, who get arrested for impersonating being a porn producer in order to lure women and trick women into having intercourse with him as a way to, get in the biz, can be arrested and charged and convicted of rape. It really does show you that the people out there that have been anti-GamerGate, I mean, they keep doing worse and worse and worse things. And yet we, who, constantly talk about it, we constantly bring it up when it's needed, are here as a watchdog organization, a watchdog community. We are the ones that are paying attention to this stuff. And even though, for the most part, Gamergate has, in fact, I'd say pretty much kind of like, faded off. Not dead. It's gone into hibernation, if you will. I think that's a good way to describe it. It's gone into hibernation. It's basically still a watchdog organization. But if you look at the way that the left-leaning media has been acting recently, we're 1 year into Trump, right? Or, well, 1 year past the election. And they're looking back at the course of this past year and they're like, who do we blame for this? Who do we blame in order to get clicks? Who is the biggest internet boogeyman we can think of in order to push this kind of agenda, in order to make sure that we are not seen as the ignorant people who pushed a horrible candidate who failed to campaign in 2 states and the whole election came down to 77,000 votes? Who can it be? It's them pesky gamer gators. That's who it is. It's them pesky gamer gators going out there and being the boogeyman the internet doesn't hear. I could imagine like 20 years from now, someone like Juan here sitting at home and going like, let me tell you the story of GamerGate. And it came like a thief in the night. And it took everything from me not to fight back the way that I did, but I called in bomb threats in order to get myself a story to cover. Who knows? At this point, it's all stupid. But hey, listen, as long as they keep being stupid, we have something to talk about. And again, it's a better way to show these guys that we're not the bad guys here. They are. Anyway, your thoughts about this, let me know in the comments below. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This has been $3 Theater. I'm sorry, this has been Mundane Matt. It's what happens when you run 2 channels. Be sure to leave your comments below. I will talk to you guys later. Subscribe, and Merry Christmas.